Hello, coaches. This is a recent conversation I had with Ciaran at ViPER, who utilize virtual reality to help with the decision making, tactical awareness, and a unique player development platform. This is really good experience, really interesting chat. We talk about two different systems, a 4-4-2, a traditional 4-4-2, building out against a 3-5-2. Now, if you did this in a tactics board, this is what it would look like. You'd have to move all the magnets. With the ViPER system, we're doing this here as a chat where Ciaran is in England and I am in the US and I am on my Oculus headset, which is unbelievable. The video does not do it justice about the kind of view that you get, the 360 view, the virtual reality view. We go through the conversation about different players, how we would break a press in this situation. And you could have this as a player to coach, you could have this coach to player, coach education, unit meetings. There's a range of different ways that you can use the software. So I was really excited to use it. Hopefully this gives you an idea. Below, there's a link to a special offer that you can get a trial and get a look at it. I highly recommend it. Here is the chat with Ciaran. Enjoy.
So, I mean, listen, it's just an open conversation. We've set up like a manufactured formation, and really it's about, anything we kind of want to work on in terms of a tactical element. This is playing out from the back against a 3-5-2 when you've got a back four. I mean, I'm going to take a view on the number 5, the left centre back, and get him on the ball, or her on the ball, depending on who you're working with. So I've done that, and then I can see I'm going to go and be that player, and I can see the picture. So I'm starting to see, okay, my relationship between where's my fullback and my wide player in my 4-4-2. Where's the two centre forwards in the opposition team? What are they doing? I mean, you can control them. You can actually jump in and say, okay, well, what happens if I move a player here or there? I mean, I can see you've highlighted the left back.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be interested in discussing the left back and the left midfielder and potentially how they would be looking to support me. Now, we can see that we've got grids, and we've created these grids that creates 5 lanes, if you like, 5 channels that separate the pitch, in a geographical manner. And then you've got 3/3 of the pitch, which is standard what we would use when we're coaching, when I've been coaching professionally, how we incorporate certain pitch geography for players to understand what they're doing. But on your control panel on the far right, there's a little grid button, and you can switch that on or off. So you can have the grids on, or you can have them off. I quite like them on because it helps with visualization.
Yeah.
So, and also you've got your drawing tool, which is your sketch tool, which is your little pencil with a squiggly line, and you can pick a color. So I'm just going to circle the left back and the left midfielder, and you'll be able to see that on your screen. And then you can just X that, and then that comes off. So yeah, this is a really interesting area here in terms of what are we looking for this player to do and this player to do. Currently, you can see that they're in the same channel. So when I'm talking to players about how do we ensure we're in space, and we're also creating options for player on the ball, in this case the left centre back, what sort of things are we looking for? So if I was going to manufacture something, I'd be looking potentially for my left back to be in a wide area, and that'll allow the wide player to come inside the pitch, and then we can actually see that happening. Now, if I go and become the left midfielder that's come in, I can then see from his perspective, if I'm in space, depending on what the opposition players have done. Bearing in mind we're playing against wing backs, am I in space to receive the ball? If I look at the left back's position, I can see that he's actually been marked. The wing back has chosen to actually come across and mark me, so I'm now no longer probably a priority option for the player on the ball. So potentially I'd be looking to play the ball into the number 11 who's come inside the pitch, and then we can see from his perspective, which have just become him, I'm now in the middle third, now looking to progress up the pitch. I mean, what's your thought on it?
I really like the scenario. It's a really interesting scenario, because if you're up against 3-5-2, you're more often than not it's going to be a press. They're going to use those front two to press. So we're going to have to solve this quickly. So I think the starting point was that the wing back could take care of fullback and winger. You said there they were in the same line.
Yes.
And then they could man mark here, and you still had a free player at the back. So I think, yeah, moving the player wide, engaging the wing back, and enticing the wing back high, and then you move the 11 into the central channel, because it now asks questions of the 6. I would then ask the 9 to go across. Can we move there, move there? And then I would say then that.
So just to jump in, are you still on your tactics board?
Yes.
So if you press play, because I can't see your tactics board.
Oh,
if you
sorry.
press play,
okay.
I'll start to see that. So that's a really great visual now. We've just seen all of them move across.
So then what I would do then is I would assume that they would shift, they would rotate attack and mid onto the inside 11, and then drop. What I would do then is that would free up one of our attacking mids.
You're looking at this player to come across, right? Okay.
So there you would have that. So maybe there's an up, back, and through option.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, and then also, then if it was played in.
Well, let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at it. So I'll take over. I'm gonna. So you've moved the ball into the 11, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got this opportunity for the ball to be played back, and then potentially we can see either into the striker's feet, if we would choose to do that, depending on their position, or, I mean, actually, if we go back on that, you've got, and I'm just going to draw on here, you've got your inside center forward for the Reds, so this player here, and then you've got your one who's kind of gone over the other side of the pitch, the side of the ball. You could be looking for an option in behind, and an option short, and you create that kind of double movement where it's working opposite. So when I used to work with players, especially in groups of pairs, would be looking at, okay, how can you maybe work together and your relationship maybe work on opposites. So if one of you does one thing, i.e. you get the number 9 coming short, then you might see that, now he's probably come a little bit too short there, but then you might see the number 10 making the movement in behind, and then for that ball to be played over the top. I can go back and undo that, and I'll go back to your original position where you had the ball in with the number 11.
Can you put him back there to the centre midfielder that was on it? Because I think this is a really good view with the app where you've got like the picture of this player. Because a lot of times with tactical boards, Ciaran, I find that you don't actually get the appreciation of vertical space or where the overload is. So now, like you said there about you moved the first 9, the strong side 9 to the ball. Yeah. And you can see there in this picture, like this, I think this is brilliant because that is going to entice that space. And if you're a player here now looking at that there, you can also then see you've got that vertical space. Now, the far side as well, there could be an opportunity to the number 10 or the attacking midfielder here.
Yes.
Get out of that. Where they could then receive this pass, and now they're in a position to drive and with a runner. Yeah. So I think it's brilliant picture that.
Yeah, and especially as well when you think about it, because what's difficult and challenging in a standard tactics board for players is the disconnect. So whereas in here I'm actually the player on the ball at the moment, and I can see there's a lot to be said for depth perception as well. So I can see actually the spaces where that sort of forward straight line pass into the number 9 actually looks feasible, because I can see the defensive midfielders on the blue team are within maybe 10-15 yards, but that's enough for me to play a good pass into him for him to be able to turn. Also, I can identify that the player that the 9 was supposed to be marked by, will it have been the outside of the back 3 on the right hand side. They have chosen, and probably rightly so, they've chosen to stay in their position because there's a lot of space in behind. And if you think about where I am on the pitch at the moment, I'm actually still in my defensive third. So essentially, I'm not really scoring a goal from this position. Yes, I'm starting to build something, but a lot of phases probably have to happen. But again, if I then move, if I move the ball into the center forward, so if I move it into him, and then I can actually become him and see the picture. And now you start to get a completely different picture. Now, we haven't touched on what the opposite wide midfielder's doing here, but if we look at this in isolation, this is now a completely different picture for me, where we're actually building up the pitch, and then you would expect to see your, obviously we've started off with the left centre back. They're now moving up the pitch, so we can actually just start to move people, and I'm just moving them now on the tactics board up the pitch. Still got the number 4 in support, but bringing in this aspect of now seeing these players move up the pitch, and that now creates a completely different kind of situation to visualize. So it's actually a really good example.
Brilliant.
And I'll go back to my, and we can, the great thing about this is actually we can go forward and back. If we've created a movement, we say, okay, let's have a look at that again. There's a little undo button where we can just go back to it and visualize it from different perspectives. So, and we've only really discussed probably phase 1 or 2 of a potential 15 phase of what we're trying to do to get up the pitch.
It gets the wheels turning, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Because you could really run away with this conversation about how, okay, what does this actually do, and how do in terms of this phase, and how can we? And there's actually quite a few ways we can solve this problem in terms of where we go next. Like you've just alluded to, what's my number 8 doing? Is that player in space to actually, if I move the ball to the number 8 in my team, and then so he gets the ball across there, and then I become him. We've now shifted from a left half of the pitch in terms of if we drew a big line from the center of the goal to the center of the opposite goal, and we just had it in this like a left half and a right half. We've now shifted it right across, and now we've got quite a lot of space here to work with. Just by that simple open up from the number 4. And we could still have the centre forwards trying to make their movement as a decoy. Well, they would make that anyway because potentially the ball might go across there. But if you think about a player in midfield situation, the number 4, thinking, actually, I've got a couple of options here. And if you can give them 2 options, that for me is a great starting point for them.
Yeah, and I think as well, one of the objectives for me in this, if I was doing this with a team, would be, like, it's great that you can see distances. It's great that you can see structures. And you're obviously not trying to prescribe every single play, but I think the objective or the outcome I would look for is, can you get a central player with the ball, with time and space facing forward? Because that then creates a situation where now those back 3, like a back 3, I think is very reliant typically on cover. So if you can engage with vertical movement now, you can create that space, and that can open up. You mentioned there before about we haven't taken in consideration there's a fullback on the weak side there that's redundant at this stage. Like you can use that as an overload and a potential situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because on the right hand side for the Reds, there is a 2v1 situation. Now, you would obviously see the left of the 3 centre backs in the blue team. Potentially is going to start shifting across if the ball is on the right hand side. If we go back with it with a 4. So there's massive opportunities on this right hand side here to exploit. And sometimes players don't see that and recognize that because they're focused on the here and now and the vicinities that they're in. And again, there are different options that they can use in this situation within the number 9, the number 8. But how do we, essentially, if you think about trying to create opportunities to score, you've got to find ways to move the opposition into certain areas and then exploit the space. And in this way, you can see that you're right. The fullback on the red team can actually come inside and create an overload. And in potentially even so far as coming into the inside channel, it doesn't matter. What you find with players, sometimes they can be very rigid in terms of thinking they can only be in one particular area. When in actual fact, you've just made a great point about time, space, facing forward, playing forward. is essentially what you want to try and achieve in every situation. Now, it's not available in every situation, but that's what you want to ultimately try and achieve. And if you can get that, then you're in a good spot to try and penetrate and move forward up the pitch.
Yeah, it's also, again, like the back three is a really interesting system where I think if you make those wing backs make decisions, you know, that you've usually got a spare at the back, so they're an advantage. The midfield's all set, it's usually 3v3. The front two are in a great position because they're 2v2v centre backs. But wing backs, I think, can be manipulated in terms, like even in this picture right now, the still you can see the variety in one wing back high, one wing back low, and if you can get them up the park, then you can then put strikers. We've got you move the 9 into a vertical space.
Yeah.
But if the 9 then went in, if we go out, put the 9 into a wider space, and then now has to take a player away, and that's defenders hate that, Ciaran, don't they? They hate moving into those wider areas.
Yeah, especially players in a back three, because essentially what you'll find is those are generally centre back players, and they don't like playing in those wide areas because essentially what it creates is it creates they become uncomfortable. You know, I remember when I was at Tottenham as a player, and I actually played in that position. I was a midfielder by trade, but I played in that position a few times. And when strikers, essentially what the back three want to do in this situation is they want to stay together. They want to stay virtually in the centralized areas, and they don't want to have to do much running. And so if you can get versatile forwards to take them away and make it really uncomfortable, then you're relying, if you think about it, you're relying on them three to actually fill the gaps correctly. And that's not always going to happen through lack of concentration, focus. So what ends up happening here is you start to get gaps appearing, and then how do you exploit that? So by that movement, simple movement, you get them feeling uncomfortable, which is a real psychological benefit. But then you potentially create spaces for people to move through for the Reds, essentially. Because even in this situation, if you can see the number 4 on the ball, yeah, he might have a bit of pressure coming from behind from the centre forward who's now transitioned, because originally he was doing this job, but now he's now probably and you know, a centre forward's job is always to make it uncomfortable for the deep line players in midfield. You know, when the ball's bypassed them, if that makes sense. But in this situation, there's you know a real opportunity to play balls into those spaces, and also how does it affect, you know, the holding midfielder in the blue team. You know, he's going to have to come across. She's going to have to come across and maybe try and fill those gaps. And by doing that, then it creates a different space. So if I just move that number 8 in there, now potentially you've got a ball into the second centre forward feet. If the gaps, this is actually a great visual. I'm going to go and be the number 4 here. Okay, I might not play that because I've had a look, and it's, you know, my pass would have to be quite accurate to get that into space for the centre forward. So I've gone and become the number 4. I'm on the ball. I've looked at where the blue holding midfielder is, and then the advanced attacking midfielder in the blue team. So what's great about this, and I talk about depth perception and spaces, you can actually see the gaps. So do I think the gap into the centre forward who's in the central area of the pitch, do I think that ball's actually on? Well, I'd probably have a go and play it, but again, it's a risk, isn't it? So, you know, what would be a better pass for me? Well, actually, I can see the number 8 in my team is a better pass because he doesn't have a lot of pressure around him. So by being able to come onto the pitch, you can actually see those. Because if you went up on a tactics board, you could say, well, I could play the ball round the corner into the centre forward's feet. But actually, are you going to do that in a game? You might not, because things are moving quite quickly.
Even body shapes, like you can see when that 4's in possession, you know, you can see there where you're probably going to get pressure from in the angle. It actually allows you to see the type of pass that if we move that 9 into that channel, and that 10 is now there's that vertical space is free. So now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, what type of pass would I chip that with the outside of my right foot? Would I play it with my left foot? You know, it gives you a different visual with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's players have to be mindful of that. That's why technical skills really important, developing those aspects of being able to play different types of passes. Because again, you don't know, depending on how that pass has come back to the number 4, because we said it was an up, back, and through.
Mm.
It's gone into the 11 who's come inside the pitch. So that was our original kind of sequence. The 11's come inside the pitch. The ball's been played. It's been set back. As it's set back to me, if I'm a right-footed player now, if I was a right-footed player, so if I'm a right-footed player, that might be an outside of the foot in there. As this player's approaching, because the space there will then be created, so that ball actually becomes a little bit easier.
And you could even then do, if that's going to be bounced in, you could even play that ball in, get it back, so bounce it, they check, and you go for the return. So it's almost one of these.
Yeah.
Where now you're in the center. Because again, like, why do you play a back three? And typically, I find coaches choose a back three because they need a bit more cover. But I think a defensive midfielder in a back three is almost spoiled for cover, where they're not. That mobility is typically an issue. So you're trying to give them as much protection as possible. So if you can expose the mobility with combination play in the midfield and then verticality higher up the pitch, you should break that press.
Yeah, you should do. But recognizing that as well, fundamentally, you want players to understand how that picture might play out. So again, if we think about, even using this platform, we've now had, I've gone in and become some players. So my brain has now got a bit of visual representation of what that might look like in the game. Not to say that my outside of the foot pass and give and go round the corner and get at the other side will actually come off, because a lot of things technically have to be good. The pace of the ball, the quality of the pass, the accuracy, how the centre forward receives it, all come into play. So there's a lot of variables in place. But for me, in terms of coaching players, that's actually not my main concern. My main concern would be if a player is in that position as the number 4 was before the bounce of Pat. So if I just go back here, it was great representation from you, is that if they didn't know that was an option to do, that would be the real worry. If they were, for me, because players develop at different rates, and this is why it helps them then go on the pitch and practice. In this system enriches that opportunity to go and practice these technical skills, where then they can actually see, well, yeah, I know this is on. It might not come off every single time, but the real key is that the players understand and recognize this could be an option that I could choose. And then obviously in this situation now, you can look at how it really affects the number 8 on your side as well, because then you've got a real opportunity to attack.
When you compare this against, if this is a pre-game, like, all right, we've done a scouting report and we've got our system, right? We've got 3-5-2 tomorrow. It's an uncommon formation that we're up against in systems. So what are the spaces that we can take advantage of? Like, for you to do this, we've chatted for 25 minutes. For you to do this on a training pitch with the wind blowing and the sports scientist pointing at their watch and set pieces coming up, it'd take you way longer to put the players in these type of situations, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would do. Again, the great thing is you can connect as many players as you want here. So you could have your 11 players actually with headsets on or with their laptop open in a 3D simulation, and they can actually be just connecting and collaborating with you. So you could be talking about, okay, we've discussed the left centre back, so you could have that person providing a little bit of content and context to it from their personal perspective. We've had the 11 rolling in, we've had the 2 centre forwards working. We haven't really discussed the right centre back or the full back, but we could say, okay, how does this affect you? So player X, is the right centre back. How does this affect you in this situation? And they can actually take over and start moving themselves up the pitch and say, well, this is the position I would be in. Okay, how does that? So then you could go, right, okay, right back, show me now where you would want to come in this situation and why. But then we can always manufacture, okay, what if this happens? What if the ball's given away and the blue centre forward comes into the little pocket into here? What happens then? So you can start to then play out potential scenarios based on the analysis that you've done of opposition. And that allows them to start getting the pictures in place, but also a little bit of theoretical rationale for the expectations of what might happen. So when we talk about the learning zones and we talk about pre-action, so what might happen and what would be the potential solutions to that. And this is a really useful tool to be able to do that.
It's brilliant because again, like it's the engagement level as well, though, because match day -1 is typically the players are ready to get out and get after the game. So a walkthrough will disengage. The tactics board probably today, with everyone seeing this type of technology at their disposal and visuals, Monday Night Football and Instagram, this here's way more engaging for a footballer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, we've worked with footballers, and they want to take over the session, which is great because, as a kind of ex-professional coach myself, one of the struggles with players was that they're very reluctant to get up in front of someone and start talking about the game because, in one respects, they haven't quite learned all of the game. I mean, certainly as a player, when I was a player to where I was as a coach, my knowledge of the game was completely different, and that's just through experience and learning. But they'd be quite reluctant to go up to a tactics board or talk about a video on a screen. But when we get them with a headset on, or when we get them in front of a computer that shows 3D simulation and they can see it from their perspective, they almost like want to jump into their position. Right, this is me. This is me, and this is what I would do, and then I'd move me mate, in a different position, and this is what I'd be thinking about it. It starts to get them engaged in terms of their learning, and that's for me one of the key things about the system. How can we engage, the younger generation, the next generation of future stars? How can we engage them in? I mean, in my opinion, in an area that's probably still very underrepresented. Game knowledge, game understanding, game intelligence. How can we solve problems? How can we help players to solve problems at fast pace, speeds in game situations? And there's a connection here. I'm on the pitch. I feel like I'm on the pitch. I can see the gaps. I can see the spaces. I can see the pressure. So I can feel it. And that helps them with their position-specific visualization, as opposed to, okay, I can see you moving counters on a tactics board.
What do you think about how you would structure this type of work throughout a week, either at a part-time club level or a competitive academy level? Where would you see it coming in?
Well, there's a few different aspects really, because we've built the system to be really flexible. So, you can work with players remotely, so away from the club, and they can. I mean, I'm talking to you from the UK, you're in America, we're on the same pitch. You're moving players, I can see it. I'm moving players and drawing all these, wonderful squiggly lines, and you can see it. And we're having an enriched conversation as well, because we can hear each other and we can speak to each other. So if you think about different types of coaches who work one-on-one with players can do it in-house or remotely. Coaches who want to work with a group on a team session or team tactics or team analysis from past performance, or coaches that want to work with specific units. So let's just say we were building some rotation sequences in a midfield three, and it's based on certain triggers that come from the back three when we're playing out from the back, just as an example, just made up example. Then you could get those three in, but you don't need 22 players on a pitch to be able to facilitate that. So it just allows for, for me, I think if I was working with a player, if I did 10 minutes, 15 minutes with them, that's perfectly fine. You wouldn't want to go too much because you wouldn't want to overkill it, even though they'd want to stay in there, because you're trying to get certain pictures in their heads, and in doing that you have to build this. It's not a use it once and it solves a problem. It should be an ongoing basis, but you have the flexibility to use it remotely. So they could be sat in their front room with a headset on or on their computer. You could be located at the club or at home, and you're doing a session with your team, with individuals, with units, however you want it. So and if I was looking at this, so this system is made to be really low cost to be accessible to all coaches. So if I like this picture and I said, right, this is a starting position that I would want, then I can actually save this picture and I can store it. So I can actually just save it. I'm just doing an example of that. I can save it, and then I can call on that at any time, and then I can use it. So I could just drag it on almost onto the pitch and say, right, this is what we're working on. And the next phase that we're going to be doing is building in sequencing. So actually creating predetermined sequences. So I really value, Gary, the discussion we've had where we're having a discussion about the movement, I'm moving things, but we're mindful as well that clubs, coaches will want to build their tactical syllabus of learning at serious levels, and by being able to create sequences of, let's just say what we were talking about, receiving as a left centre back, getting a rotation from a wide midfielder and a fullback, getting a number 4 to come short to face up for the bounce pass, playing around the corner, getting it again, the number 9 going into the channel, creating spaces. You could actually create that as one full animation. That's what we're building into the next upgrade, and then that means that we could go in and play all of that. We could pause it at any time, and we could go in and say, right, okay, what's happening here? What's your thoughts on this? And how can we, what are you learning from it? So again, for me, it would have been easy for us to build a system that was really high cost, because you can see the technology and how beneficial this can be. But this is around giving access to all coaches so that they can use it in whatever level that they're working for. Ultimately, it's a tactical learning, game learning tool. So anytime you're working with players on tactics, on game understanding, on game intelligence, it's a great system to use, in my opinion, because you can get them on the pitch and visualize it.
Okay, Ciaran, coaches that are all about this and that want to learn more and want to get involved and want to work on their players tactically, what's the next steps?
Well, we've created an open system that coaches can actually use for free. So we wanted to make sure that we got people's eyes on it. So they can actually download a Windows version on a Windows device through our website, which is portal.futureperformance.tech, and they can download that. If they wanted the VR version, then they can contact us, and then we can arrange for them to have that. Now, what that won't give them is, and they need to be mindful of this, is that it won't give them a closed channel. So it's an open channel, which means that anybody that has that free version and they go into the pitch, they can move players around. There might be a bit of interference. So, and it won't allow them that closed channel to work with other users on their pitch. So essentially, for like the low cost that we're offering, it's like $50 a month. Then they can work with as many players as they want on their own football pitch. So there's no interference, no one else coming into it. They control it, and it allows them to save templates. It'll allow them the sequencing aspects, but it essentially gives them a closed environment where they can work solely with their players on their own private channel, and that includes being able to communicate over distance, being able to work and collaborate, players being able to move players around, coaches being able to do it, and they all see it together, and that's that collaborative approach. Essentially, what I want to do is I just want to get coaches using it. Download the free version, and ultimately, if the free version means that it's sufficient for you, listen, that's great. That's not my goal. Is to get as many coaches using it as possible. I think there's real value that we've just shown in collaboration. And essentially, it is a coach player or a coach development system. So you can think about coach education as well, coaches working with other coaches, and making it really flexible for them. So it's pretty easy how people can get hold of it and try it.
Brilliant. And we'll put all the information below, and your email as well, Ciaran. Coaches can reach out to you and ask them questions. Brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is an ongoing thing. We want to have collaboration with coaches. I'm sure some coaches will have weird and wonderful ideas they want to maybe showcase on it. So always open for that collaboration and showcasing their ideas as well. Because a real important thing is it's not a one size fits all. This is an open, flexible system for coaches to just expose their own ideas. There's loads of different ways we can solve problems. And it's up to the coaches how they want their players to do that, around the basic fundamental principles of the game, of course.
Fantastic. Ciaran, thanks so much. Love it. We'll do it again.
Brilliant. Yes, yeah, pleasure, mate.